Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this a little muggy Wednesday morning. My name is Gina Davis, and I am the Education Program Specialist and Professional Development Coordinator with the State of Maryland, Team Labor. Today, we have a wonderful presentation for you from Rebecca Boggs with PG Community College. Quiet, empower your students to figure it out. She will be walking us through this for the next 30 minutes, and we're super excited to be able to share it with you today. Typically, we have a poll available for you to put what your role is within your program, but if you can go ahead and type what your role is within your program in the questions panel, that's what we'll be utilizing for anywhere that you see chat throughout the presentation today. And we're starting to see some responses. Hi, GED, ESL teachers, great, instructional specialists. I'm seeing some names that I know. Welcome. Welcome back to a number of you. Great, 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 great. This is perfect. So thank you again for joining us this morning, but I'm going to pass it over to Rebecca, and I hope you all enjoy the presentation.
All right, good morning. Thank you for all of you for joining me today. My presentation is Quiet, Empower Your Students to Figure It Out. A little bit about me. I was an ESL teacher for 13 years at Prince George's Community College. I taught level A up to level 5, and now I'm the Career Pathways Coordinator. So I have a new role. I do miss teaching. I really love teaching, so it'll be fun to get to talk about it today. So I've got some strategies for you. Got 4 strategies to keep your students talking. Number 1, show students how to do surveys. Number 2, teach students how to participate in conversation lines. Number 3, give students the language to ask each other clarification questions. Number 4, demonstrate running dictation and Teams dictation at the board. So these are the main strategies we're going to talk about today. And let's see here. My screen is covered a little bit. Let me see if I can change that. Hold on a minute. Okay, let's see. For some reason, my slide is covered. Can you help me with my slide?
So Rebecca, it's actually not covered for us, but if it's in the way, you can drag the control panel or push the orange arrow and it'll get it out of the way for you.
Okay, I got it now. All right. So what strategies do you use to get your students to talk more? If anybody has any ideas, that would be great. You can type them in the question box. Pairs, let's see. Work in pairs, do problems. Let me see if I can enlarge this here. Ask an open question. Okay, that's a good one. Events, icebreakers, journaling. Okay, those are good. I like the journaling one. Asking a question. Implementing longer wait times after you ask a question. That's a really good one. Okay. Ask a question which probably has, oh goodness, it's hard for me to read this. Which has, sorry, opposite answer from students. Okay. Implementing longer wait times after asking a question. Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, moving on. Okay, so I told you a little bit about my experience. This is my level 3 ESL class, and we were having a party. Those are our certificates that we gave out. So when I first became a teacher, I really didn't think about how much I talked. I just taught. So I was sort of unaware of how much I was speaking until I went to observe a fellow teacher. Her name was Julie, and she had her students doing conversation lines. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but it's when the class divides in two and they face each other and they talk. And they were so animated and they just kept talking and talking. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And they looked like they were having so much fun. So that's when I started thinking about how much am I talking and how much are students talking. So we're going to talk a little bit about teacher talk time, TTT, and student talk time, STT. A reminder from the Teach Like a Champion's Reduce TTT and Increase STT, a video from Kaizen Teaching School Alliance. During an hour class, if the teacher talks half the time, 30 minutes, and there are 15 students, that leaves 2 minutes student talk time per student. So that really doesn't leave a lot of time for students to talk. All right, another question for you. Do you think you occasionally talk too much when you teach? And why do you think teachers talk too much sometimes? And if you can put the answer in the question box. Anybody have any thoughts on that one? Okay. Okay, let's move on.
So Rebecca, if you're not able to see, there were a number of really great responses. So afraid of dead air, yes to tell a story. I'm so sorry. I didn't feel the students know the answer, filling the silence. Want to do the instruction instead of involving students. So there's a number of really, really great responses.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so next one. Jeremy Harmer, author of How to Teach English, says, overuse of TTT is inappropriate because the more a teacher talks, the less chance there is for the students to practice. A good teacher maximizes STT and minimizes TTT. So Jeremy Harmer also wrote The Practice of Language Teaching. He was an ESL teacher in Mexico and the UK and has taught teachers all over the world. So we have a little bit more from Jeremy. Teacher talking quality from Jeremy. Also consider TTQ. This is one I'd never heard of before. Teacher talking quality. In other words, teachers who just go on and on are not offering students the right kind of talking, whereas teachers who engage students with their stories and interaction using appropriate comprehensible input will be helping them to understand and acquire the language. So I like how he talks about here that it is important sometimes to take a moment and tell one of our stories. I think this will really help us bond with our students. Okay, strategy number 1, the survey. One way to prepare for surveys is to do a brainstorm. I like to do this activity as one of the first day activities where we brainstorm introduction questions. So I would write a few questions like, what is your name? How old are you? And then I'd have students write questions in their notebooks. And then I'd get volunteers to write more of those questions on the board. So we'd have a nice big long list of introduction questions. And then I usually pick these 3 questions because I think they're interesting when we get the answers. So the first question is, what is your name? What city do you live in? And what country are you from? So next I would model the survey. So I would make a chart in my notebook, and then I would show it to the students, and I'd have them make the chart in their notebooks. And then I would ask a question to one of the more gregarious students. Actually, I'd ask all of the questions to that gregarious student, and I would write the answers in my notebook and model the activity. And then I would have the students do the same. I really enjoy this, doing the survey, because I ask students to stand up, they walk around. I think it relaxes them so that they can really speak to each other. And once they've talked to everybody in the class, that provides a great opportunity for a lot of speaking. And when they're finished, I like to go over the answers with them and ask them, so what countries are people from? And I start to make a chart, and I say, okay, look at your survey. So how many people said they're from a certain country? Let me know. And so then we write down all the different countries, and then sometimes that leads to, okay, what languages are spoken in these countries? And we might start writing about the languages, and then we talk about, well, how many people here speak 2 languages, and how many people speak 3? And then we talk about learning languages. It just can take off from there. Lots of great conversations. Okay, so as I mentioned in the beginning.
Rebecca, we have a quick question from somebody. Do you use a notebook in person, or do you write it on the board so everyone can see?
So I actually put the survey questions, and I make a survey on the board, and then I also put it in my notebook, and I show everybody how it's supposed to look in my notebook. So hopefully that answers the question. Okay, strategy number 2, conversation lines. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I love conversation lines. I saw one of my fellow teachers using them in her class, and I thought they were great. So one way to do this is to use introduction questions again, or you could prepare a role play. For example, one half of the room could be cashiers and the other could be customers. So pairs will practice asking and answering introduction or role play questions. So I have them practice in pairs first, and then we all stand up and get in conversation lines, and then they can practice the questions. So this is how the conversation lines work. So students line up in 2 lines facing each other. Students ask and answer the introduction or role play questions. When most students appear to have gone through all the questions, signal them that time is up. All right, so here we've got our 2 lines. Hopefully this will make it a little bit more clear if you haven't seen this before. So here's the conversation line rotation. So students line up facing each other. One line rotates one learner to the left, while the first learner goes to the end of the line, and the other line remains stationary. So here's our rotation. So this guy goes to the end, and then all these people go to that side. All right. So does anybody have any questions about conversation lines? And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to see them, so I might need some help here. So if you have conversation lines.
Rebecca, can you give us maybe a couple of examples of like questions that you've used in your class to get the conversation going?
Sure. So I guess a lot of it would be the introduction questions that I was talking about earlier. So do you have a job? How many children do you have? Let's see, favorite things. What's your favorite color? What kind of hobbies do you have? And I usually have the questions, the introduction questions written on the board. So when we go into conversation lines, they can refer back to the board. And then about halfway through, I go and I erase the questions on the board and I say, okay, now it's time to see if you can remember these. And then they try to remember the questions. And then I also encourage them just to come up with new questions as they go along so that they can really get to know each other. Okay, so here's something that I read about online. I've never actually done this. I think it's a great idea though. So you can combine conversation lines and surveys. So you would prepare 3x5 cards with questions about skills, for example. So you could say, can you plant seeds? Or do you like to work outside? On the back of each card, you would do a survey tally using a yes and a no column. Ready, set, go. So you would set a timer for 1 minute. Students would ask and tally questions on the 3x5 cards while standing in conversation lines. And then when time is up, one line rotates one learner to the left while the first learner rotates to the end of the line. The other line remains stationary. Now that everyone has a new partner, the timer starts again for 1 minute and students continue to survey each other. And then you would just continue through the entire line. So I think this would be really fun to have a little tally going as you were sort of interviewing your fellow classmates. Okay, so I've given you some ideas for survey questions that I've used. I'm wondering if any of you have some good thoughts on what survey questions you might use. And for some reason, I'm having trouble with my question box here. So I don't know, Gina, do we have any?
Why are you here in English class? Do you have any pets? What brought you to the USA? What goals do you have for your future? Questions that would introduce a new lesson or topic. I'm sure that could be relative to a lot of things. Have you ever heard of blank? Or does anyone have experience with blank? Favorite holiday, worst or best day? That can be a little challenging for some people to share. But I mean, getting the conversation started is certainly the goal here.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. Hobbies or sports? Thank you guys. These are wonderful.
All right, thank you. All right, strategy number 3, clarification questions. Give students phrases and questions to use to gain clarification from each other and from you. So when I first started teaching, my supervisor came and observed my class and she had this suggestion. And it was such an aha moment to think that I would need to give my students questions so that they could talk to each other. Sometimes I think we just assume that they can ask each other questions and help each other out, but really they need the language to be able to do this. So keep your students talking with these clarification questions and useful phrases. The first one, what did you get for number 1? What did you get for number 2? Next, will you repeat that, please? Please speak slower. I don't understand. How do you spell it? What does blank mean? So these questions I usually go over on the first day or second day of class, and I write them on the board and I say these are really important. They'll help you in class. They also help you when you're making phone calls. They're just really great questions, so write them down in your notebooks. And I really like the first question, what did you get for number 1? What did you get for number 2, etc. Because students are constantly asking, teacher, what is this answer? Is this okay? And so when I'm walking around and somebody asks me, I say, well, why don't you ask your partner? Just say, what did you get for this number? And so that really starts a dialogue between the students so that they can figure out the answers themselves. Also, at the very end of an exercise, I sort of make an announcement. I say, okay, everybody talk to a partner, say, what did you get for number 1? What did you get for number 2? So I have them go over the answers by themselves before I ever review the answers. That way they can figure it out and they can talk to each other. The next questions are pretty self-explanatory. The last question, what does blank mean? I really like this one. I like to give out a paragraph for students to read and have them underline words that they don't understand. And then when they're finished, I have the students ask each other, what does blank mean? So I have them go over all of the underlined words with each other. Now, sometimes this doesn't work because nobody knows the words that are in the paragraph. So then I ask them to ask me, teacher, what does this mean? Miss Rebecca, what does this mean? So I think that really opens up dialogue and helps them to do the exercise by themselves. Oh, good. Strategy 4, dictation. This is fun. Dictation is difficult, and we're all aware of sort of a typical dictation where the teacher reads and the students write. So these are ideas to help make dictation much more fun. So I've got pass the torch, teach your students to dictate to each other. So first we have running dictation. So from the BBC, they say, this is a lively activity that practices speaking, listening, writing, walking, and remembering. Choose a short passage or dialogue and make several copies. Put the copies up around the walls of the classroom or on desks or tables or even around the school building. In pairs, one student runs to read the passage. So wherever the passage is, if it's on a desk that's across the room, they run across the room. If it's on the wall across the room, they run across the room to the wall. She memorizes part of the passage, and then she runs back to her partner. She dictates what she remembers to her partner, who writes down what she's just said. Then she runs again and again until she has dictated the entire passage. And then students swap roles. So I really like this because students start laughing, they're having a great time, they're running, they're trying hard to memorize things. The person that's writing is having to think about how they spell things. So it really engages the students. And the winner is, so the winning pair is the team that finishes first. And after this exercise, pairs check for mistakes and help each other to see what they need to correct. More from the BBC. It says it's a good way to check spelling and fabulous for pronunciation, and it's a great memory tool. So here's another way to do dictation, pairs dictation at the board. So you could divide your class in half and draw a line down the middle of the board. You would dictate a sentence, and then a member from team 1 writes it on one half of the board, and a member from team 2 writes it on the other half simultaneously. Teammates help correct the sentence. The next teammates have a try. So I think this helps students to have one person writing next to them. I think it's not as intimidating, but it's a great way to have them at the board and to have the dictation available for the whole class at the same time. I think, like I said, it's less intimidating to have two people up there. And it's a lot of fun.
So we have a question. Do you give prizes to the winning team?
You could. I like that idea. That would be
We
fun.
also have a number of people asking how this could translate to an online format. And while I think that there are strategies for this, I think that Rebecca's concept is predominantly for a face-to-face atmosphere, but we have had a number of sessions talking about distance engagement opportunities, and I encourage everyone to check them out, but I don't want to sidetrack the conversation.
Okay. I do have an idea about that. One of our teachers, she's very experienced with online teaching, and so now that everything's online, it hasn't been a big stretch for her to move into an online setting. And she does a lot of breakout groups when she's teaching. So I don't know if everybody's familiar with that, but you can do that on Zoom. You can break out maybe 2 people so that they can talk to each other. You can break out, she does maybe 4 or 5 students in a breakout room. And then those 4 and 5 students, she would have them work together and do summaries of different things that they were reading. So I think you could actually, if you were in a breakout room, you could have one of the students dictate to the other students. So if you had 5 people in a room, you could have one person dictating while the other 4 were writing. So of course that's not running or anything like that, but I think you could actually pull off some dictation where the students were reading through a Zoom platform. So to review, create a classroom of talkative students, give students opportunities to survey, converse, ask questions, and dictate. And this is my last ESL class, level 5, and I'm there in the middle. So I think that's about it. My next slide is citation. So these are some of the links where I found the information. And then the very last slide is contact information if anybody wants to contact me or has any questions. And I'm noticing that I left off my email, but I'll give that to Gina so that we can pass that along to you. So if anybody has any questions, comments, suggestions, anything you want to share, we'd be glad to hear.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. This has been really wonderful. And I was thinking the breakout room thing too. I think that's wonderful, but that obviously depends on what capacity each program has. I went ahead and put a feedback survey. If everyone can take an opportunity in the chat box to take the feedback survey and just let us know how today went. Our goal, as always with professional development, is to do stuff that is valuable to you and your time and continue to build off of the opportunities that we have. I think this was incredibly valuable conversation, Rebecca. We certainly appreciate your time. All of our sessions are recorded and will be available on my website with the attached presentations at the end of all of the sessions for the Institute. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We certainly appreciate your time as well, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
All right, thank you so much.